everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. And that's right, guys, I'm back. I've been away for a month, basically, and I'm back a little earlier than I thought I'd be. We're still in the middle of tearing down tents from fireworks season, but our pastor, thankfully, is limiting our days to 9 hours. So basically 9 to 6 p.m. is what I'm doing this week. And that gives me time to make this video, which you are watching today. It's good to be back. I've missed you guys, and I'm looking forward to putting out new content for you over the next year. So with that being said, let's dive into the topic of today's video, which is about how the mainstream AI systems, ChatGPT, CoPilot, and Grok, they all affirm that young Earth creationism lines up with the Bible better than old Earth creationism. Now, this is going to come as a shock to many old Earth creationists because I've been saying basically the same thing for the past decade, or most of the past decade, I should say. And yet, apparently, the super smart AIs are coming to the same conclusion. Because, as you know, if you've been in this movement, this debate long enough, old Earth creationists have a very low opinion of young Earth creationists like myself. People like Smokey Saint claim that I am a low IQ person, specifically because I'm a young Earth creationist. We have people like William Lane Craig saying that young Earth creationists like myself do not understand things like hermeneutics, language, writing style, etc. We even have people like Hugh Ross, the godfather of Old Earth creationism, claiming that a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible lines up better with Old Earth creationism than young Earth creationism. Well, as we're going to see today, all of these people are liars. All of these people literally embrace a creationism position that does not come from a straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible. Let's start with CoPilot. As you may recall, some time ago, I did a live stream on my channel titled The TTOR Show, Season 5, Episode 2, chatting with Microsoft's CoPilot. And it is in this live stream where we see CoPilot answer the question of which one lines up better with the Bible, young Earth creationism or old Earth creationism. Which version of creationism lines up better with a straightforward, contextual reading of the Bible? Young Earth creationism or old Earth creationism?
When looking at a straightforward, contextual reading, young Earth creationism tends to align more closely due to its literal interpretation of the Genesis creation narrative. This perspective often holds that the days mentioned in the creation narrative are 24-hour periods, and that the Earth is thousands, not billions of years old. Old Earth creationism, meanwhile, tends to incorporate a more metaphorical or allegorical interpretation of the duration and method of creation, which can be seen as more compatible with modern scientific understandings.
So, as you guys could see from that clip, young Earth creationism lines up with a straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible, and old Earth creationism lines up with an allegorical or metaphorical reading of the Bible. In other words, according to CoPilot, if you read the Bible in a straightforward and contextual manner and you do not reinterpret it in light or in line with anyone or anything else, you will come to the conclusion that the Bible teaches that the universe, the earth, the sea, and all that is in those three things were created over the course of 6 days, 6,000 years ago, by the speech of God's mouth. And in order to believe in old Earth creationism, you have to reject the straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible, and you have to reinterpret it in light of evolution, billions of years, and Big Bang cosmology, which is what a metaphorical or allegorical reading of the Bible is. They're not accepting the straightforward contextual reading, they're literally reinterpreting the Bible in light of other things to come to their beliefs. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, that's CoPilot saying that young Earth creationism lines up better with the Bible than old Earth creationism does, but what about ChatGPT? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, as you can see on the screen, I decided to have a conversation with ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT the same question. Which version of creationism lines up better with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible? Young Earth creationism or Old Earth creationism? This is what ChatGPT said in response. A straightforward contextual reading of the Bible, especially of Genesis 1 through 11, lines up more clearly with young Earth creationism. Here's why. Point 1. Literal six-day creation. Genesis 1 describes God creating the world in 6 days, each marked by evening and morning and numbered, e.g. the first day, the second day. The Hebrew word yom, day, when paired with a number, and evening and morning in other parts of the Old Testament, always refers to a literal 24-hour day. A contextual reading of the original language supports 6 literal days, not long ages. Number 2, biblical genealogies. Genesis 5 and 11 contain detailed genealogies from Adam to Abraham, including ages at which fathers had sons. These genealogies do not allow for millions of years between generations. Adding up the lifespans leads to a creation date roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Number 3, death and sin. Young Earth creationism holds that death entered the world through Adam's sin, Romans 5:12. Old Earth creationism often places millions of years of animal death and suffering before Adam, contradicting the idea that creation was very good before the fall. A straightforward biblical view sees death as the result of sin, not part of a long evolutionary process. Number 4, the Sabbath pattern. Exodus 20:11 says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day." This is the basis for the 7-day week, 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, which only makes sense if the original creation days were normal length days. Number 5, Jesus and New Testament writers affirm it. Jesus refers to Adam and Eve being created from the beginning, Mark 10:6, not billions of years after the universe began. New Testament authors consistently treat Genesis as historical narrative, not allegory or myth. Summary. Young Earth creationism. Fits straightforward reading? Yes. Comments. Takes Genesis as literal, historical, and chronological. Old Earth creationism. Fits straightforward reading? No. Requires reinterpretation of day, yom, genealogies, and introduces death before sin. Conclusion. Young Earth creationism best aligns with a straightforward, contextual, and grammatical historical reading of the Bible. It treats Genesis as real history, not metaphor or myth, and maintains theological coherence regarding sin, death, and the gospel. Let me know if you'd like a breakdown comparing young Earth creationism with other views like theistic evolution or the framework hypothesis. So ChatGPT not only says that young Earth creationism fits a straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible better than old Earth creationism does, it flat out says that old Earth creation does not fit the straightforward contextual reading of the Bible, and that you basically have to reinterpret everything regarding origins in the Bible in order to believe in old Earth creationism. And ChatGPT even says that young Earth creationism maintains theological coherence with sin, death, and the gospel. So young Earth creationism, according to ChatGPT, is literally a salvation issue because it affects the gospel. Okay, so CoPilot and ChatGPT say that young Earth creationism lines up with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible better than old Earth creationism does. But what about Grok, the AI tied into X/Twitter? Well, I asked Grok the same question. Which version of creationism lines up better with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible? Young Earth creationism or Old Earth creationism? Now, this is where things get interesting because Grok got a lot more detailed than ChatGPT did. To determine which version of creationism, Young Earth creationism, YEC, or Old Earth creationism, OEC, aligns better with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible, we need to evaluate how each interprets key biblical texts, particularly Genesis 1 through 2, in light of their historical, grammatical, and literary context. A straightforward contextual reading implies prioritizing the plain meaning of the text as understood by its original audience, considering genre, language, and cultural context, without imposing external frameworks unless the text itself suggests flexibility. Young Earth creationism. Young Earth creationism posits that God created the universe, Earth, and all life in 6 literal 24-hour days, approximately 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, based on genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11. Key points. Genesis 1. Young Earth creationism interprets the days as literal 24-hour periods, citing the consistent use of evening and morning and the numerical sequence, first day, second day. Exodus 20:11, which links the Sabbath to the 6-day creation, reinforces this view as the Sabbath is a 24-hour day. Genealogies. Young Earth creationism takes the genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11 as comprehensive, calculating Earth's age by summing the lifespans, e.g. Adam to Noah, Noah to Abraham. Gaps are considered minimal or non-existent. Contextual support. The narrative style of Genesis 1 reads as a chronological sequence, and the lack of explicit indications of long time periods supports a straightforward reading. Young Earth creationism argues that the original audience would have understood Yom as a normal day, especially with evening and morning. Challenges. Young Earth creationism requires rejecting scientific evidence for an ancient Earth, e.g. radiometric dating, fossil records, often explaining such data via a global flood, Genesis 6 through 9, or divine creation within apparent age. Critics argue this imposes a modern scientific debate onto an ancient text. Now, the scientific evidence for an ancient Earth is total BS, and as I've explained in the past, things like the fossil record actually support young Earth creationism better than atheistic evolution and billions of years. And as I've explained in past videos, radiometric dating is not the old Earth indicator that people think that it is, because when you submit specimens to radiocarbon dating labs, then what you discover is that when you submit your samples, you actually are asked to provide an estimated age of the specimen and which layer of sediment you found it in, which is part of the whole issue of circular reasoning that old Earth advocates will eventually fall into if they try to cite radiocarbon or radiometric dating as evidence of an ancient Earth. But let's get into old Earth creationism. Old Earth creationism accepts an ancient Earth billions of years old and interprets Genesis to accommodate this, often aligning with scientific findings. Variants include day-age, gap theory, and framework hypothesis. Key points. Genesis 1. Old Earth creationism views the days as either long periods, day-age, Yom coming in indefinite time as in Psalm 94, non-chronological poetic frameworks, framework hypothesis, or separated by vast time gaps, gap theory, between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. Evening and morning may be metaphorical or structural. Genealogies. Old Earth creationism often posits gaps in Genesis 5 and 11, noting that Hebrew genealogies, Matthew 1, sometimes skips generations. This allows for a much older humanity in Earth. Contextual support. Old Earth creationism argues that Genesis 1's purpose is theological, God as creator, humanity's role, not scientific, and its poetic elements, e.g. parallelism, symmetry, suggest flexibility in interpreting days. Ancient Near Eastern creation accounts often use symbolic time frames, supporting a non-literal reading. Challenges. Old Earth creationism's flexibility can feel less straightforward as it relies on less common uses of Yom or complex interpretive frameworks. Exodus 20:11's link to a literal Sabbath challenges non-24-hour interpretations. Critics argue Old Earth creationism is driven by accommodation to modern science rather than the text alone. Now, Evaluating a straightforward contextual reading. Textual plainness. Young Earth creationism aligns more closely with a plain reading of Genesis 1, where day, evening, and morning in the numerical sequence strongly suggest 24-hour days to an ancient audience. Old Earth creationism's interpretations, Yam as eons, non-chronological days, require secondary meanings or structural analysis which, while plausible, are less immediate. Genre and context. Genesis 1 has poetic elements, repetition, structure, but its narrative prose and genealogical precision, e.g., ages in Genesis 5, lean toward historical intent. Young Earth creationism takes this at face value, while Old Earth creationism emphasizes theological over historical precision, which may stretch the original audience's understanding. Supporting texts. Exodus 20:11 and the Sabbath command tie creation to a weekly cycle favoring Young Earth creationism's literal days. Old Earth creationism's counterarguments, e.g., God's rest is ongoing, Hebrews 4:4-11, are contextually weaker in these passages. Cultural context. Ancient readers likely had no concept of billions of years, making Young Earth creationism's timeline more intuitive. However, Old Earth creationism notes that ancient Near Eastern texts often prioritize order and purpose over chronology, allowing some contextual room for non-literalism. Conclusion. Young Earth creationism aligns more closely with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible, particularly Genesis 1 through 2, due to the natural interpretation of day as a 24-hour period, the chronological narrative, and supporting texts like Exodus 20:11. Old Earth creationism, while biblically defensible through alternative interpretations of Yam, genealogical gaps, or poetic structure, requires more exegetical flexibility, which may feel less intuitive to the original audience and more influenced by external scientific considerations. However, Old Earth creationism's strength lies in its theological focus, which may align with the text's broader intent if one prioritizes purpose over timeline. If the goal is strictly a straightforward interpretation, Young Earth creationism has the edge. If the question allows for theological and genre considerations, Old Earth creationism remains a plausible alternative. So I decided to ask Grok, so basically what you're saying is that Old Earth creationism is plausible only if you reinterpret the text in light of the majority opinion of the scientific community? Grok said in response, not exactly. Old Earth creationism is plausible based on textual and contextual factors within the Bible itself, such as the flexibility of the Hebrew word yom, which can mean a period of time beyond 24 hours, potential gaps in genealogies, as seen in other biblical genealogies, and the poetic elements of Genesis 1 that suggest a theological rather than strictly chronological focus. These interpretations don't inherently depend on science, but arise from the text's language and ancient Near Eastern literary context. However, in practice, Old Earth creationism often appeals to those who seek harmony with scientific evidence for an ancient Earth, radiometric dating, fossil records. While this can influence Old Earth creationism's popularity, its biblical plausibility stands on exegetical grounds, not just scientific accommodation. Young Earth creationism still aligns more with a straightforward reading as it takes the text's plain sense, 24-hour days, tight genealogies, without needing such flexibility. In other words, even though Grok did an excellent job trying to make a case for how Old Earth creationism can line up with the Bible, Grok still admits that Young Earth creationism lines up better with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible than Old Earth creationism does. Now think about the implications of everything that we have seen between CoPilot saying that Young Earth creationism lines up with the Bible better than Old Earth creationism, with ChatGPT saying that Young Earth creationism not only lines up better with the Bible than Old Earth creationism does, but is actually a gospel/salvation issue. And even Grok, while trying to make a defense of Old Earth creationism, admits that Young Earth creationism lines up with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible better than Old Earth creationism does. What's the significance of this? Well, I've been saying the same thing for the better part of the last decade. I've been a Young Earth creationist for 11 years. And I have been defending Young Earth creationism the whole time that I've been making videos on the internet. And I also have made many videos destroying all the biblical arguments that Old Earth creationists make to justify their worldview. And I have said over and over for many years now, young Earth creationism lines up way better with the Bible than Old Earth creationism does when you read the Bible in a straightforward and contextual manner and you do not reinterpret it in light of anyone or anything else. Even Old Earth creationists like William Lane Craig in the past have admitted that they've had to reinterpret the Bible in light of the majority opinion of the scientific and academic community to justify their Old Earth creationism beliefs, even though they know they're not supposed to do that. But according to Old Earth creationists, especially people like Smokey Saint, Justin here is just a dumb, hick, young Earth creationist. He doesn't know anything about anything, and he rejects everything we know about everything in order to justify his young Earth creationism beliefs. And yet here we have AI systems that are not Christian friendly. Grok, ChatGPT, Microsoft's CoPilot. When asked which lines up better with the straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible, Old Earth creationism or young Earth creationism, each and every single one of these AIs, which have way more information to access than any human being does, and they process that information way faster than any human does, those AIs all came to the same conclusion that I've been saying for years. They all say that young Earth creationism lines up better with a straightforward contextual reading of the Bible than Old Earth creationism does. And since that is true, this means that the Bible actually does teach a young Earth. It does not support Old Earth creationism. Old Earth creationism literally relies on the adherent reinterpreting the text of the Bible in light of billions of years in Big Bang cosmology and in some cases evolution in order to justify their beliefs. This is painfully obvious if you just open your eyes and look at the world around you and look on the internet. It is painfully obvious that the Bible teaches a young Earth. And it is painfully obvious that Old Earth creationism is based on reinterpreting the Bible in light of the majority opinion of the scientific and academic community on origins in order to justify its belief. So there you have it. All of the major AI systems that we use today all agree that young Earth creationism lines up better with a straightforward, contextual reading of the Bible better than Old Earth creationism does. Have fun explaining that one away, Old Earth creationists.